for watching. Please like and subscribe to help us spread Teepa's positive approach message around the world. And don't forget to click the bell to get notified when new videos are posted. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to help us spread Teepa's positive approach message.
It was so nice we had to say it twice.
That's what happens when you don't mute the tab that pops up for YouTube. So you get a chance to hear it twice, exactly like you said that.
Okay, well, for those of you out there who are wondering, I'll show myself for just a second. I'm in a car on my way back to North Carolina from Virginia. And when I show myself, you have a hard time understanding and hearing me. And you may still have some little dropouts because I'm in a Taco Bell Kentucky Fried Chicken parking area because they've closed the dining room. But they have a decent signal, and it's as close to a signal as I can get. So I am going to ask Rachel, our wonderful question gatherer, what she has for us this evening to kick us off with nasty pet.
Yeah, we have quite a lot on our plate for tonight, but I thought maybe we could start out because our friend Jeffrey brought up a really good question, and that question has to do with, so I think something's going on, and in this case, it may have been a stroke, but is it worth going through the scans and trying to get doctors to see if it really was? Is it going to change how I support her? And I thought that was a really good question. So is it worth exploring further? And what are we going to do about it if we know? Is that close, Jeffrey?
That's correct, yes.
And when I glanced and looked at the info, it sounded like, Jeffrey, one of the major shifts or changes that has happened this time is a gravitational issue.
Yes, she starts leaning to the left when she's sitting down, and I have to support her more and encourage her to stay upright when we're at the table eating. And it just, her general gait and is a little bit slower. Eating is still okay, but the visuals. I was reading up again, her visuals. She doesn't always see the food that's in front of her. I'm now, she's still using a fork. I'm now holding one hand in one hand and then trying to help her with the other one because she doesn't always make it to the mouth properly with the food on her fork. So I have to tell her open wide and try to use one hand guiding her with the other hand holding her and get the food into her mouth. So the appetite was down, but it comes and goes. Sometimes, like today, I was able to get her to eat everything at lunch. Breakfast, her appetite has totally changed. She no longer eats scrambled eggs, but we now give her toast. She gets toast with peanut butter and jelly. So and fruit when we can. So, but anyways, it's just because of that. I was just wondering, vascular dementia is what she has. Right. So. But then, as I say, you have a stroke. What really difference does it make? I mean, part of me wants to get another CAT scan, but I just totally forgot about it when we were at the doctor's today.
And what I'm going to say, in reality, it could be due to her advancing dementia at this point, because gravitational awareness can also be affected, just like so. It's balance. It's that vestibular nerve. Coming, and it is the 8th nerve they have. It is one of the cranial nerves, and there's a probability it's typically in the same area as your acoustic nerve or your hand. It's also possible that her reaction response will tiny in your ear. There's canals that help you know where upright is. There is also possibility ability that she's having trouble.
She's gone. Yeah, I wasn't hearing much of what she was saying. It was all very garbled, her response.
It was.
The only bit I heard was there was something about supporting her when she's to try to help her be more upright. And I didn't get that fully, but anyway, we'll wait for Teepa to get back on, hopefully.
Yeah, and I'm curious. So in the world of therapy, we would experience this every once in a while, especially if we were working with someone who was experiencing any kind of neurological changes in that communication between the brain and the inner ear, and that vestibular system that Teepa was talking about. And so imagining that communication that's happening there isn't happening the way it normally would. It's not giving you the input that, ooh, you're upright, that you're in the position you should be in. And so the information that the person is getting, they go and they shift their body until they find at least what might feel for them more normal, more of like, ooh, this matches up with the way my input is giving me that this is the way the world should be. So like for yourselves, I'm curious, have any of you done that thing where you spun around and around and around and around and around, and then you stopped and the world was like, woo, everything turned sideways or kept going? It's kind of like that feeling. And so when you stand up and try to stand up, for you folks who did try that, what happened as soon as you tried to stand up straight after spinning like that?
Yeah.
It took you a minute to recover. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, I fell over. I actually fell over because if things were spinning so much, and I thought my body needed to shift in that direction. So one thing that we know, like with the vestibular system and how it works, is that sometimes there are certain movements that we could do that can help to realign things or help to get that reset button pushed so that the person might feel normal and more of an upright position. I see Teepa's joined us. But one thing we've tried before, and I've had a little bit of success with, especially if the person is able to comfortably go through these positions with me, is doing some maneuvers that help the inner ear kind of get that reset button. And there are certain ones that you can actually have a person go through, but they're definitely worth that exploration with someone who is skilled in doing those, because it is a certain pattern of movement that you have to do,
Right.
To see if that would be a potential thing to try. Or
is playing catch with a tennis ball something that would make, because it's actually not, I don't do it enough, but I can sit in one chair on the opposite side of the room, and my wife will be in her chair, and I will bounce a tennis ball on the floor, and as long as I make sure it hits her pretty much in the chest, she sort of catches it and then throws it back to me. And one other thing just about her balance and perception, it's sort of interesting. She has not yet had a fall, but that is also because we're always around her, and I always want someone to be in her presence 24/7, mainly me. When we give her a glass of, every day at 4 o'clock, she has a snack and she get a glass of an oatmeal drink or tea. She has not yet failed to put the tea back on the table, the little table right next to her chair. So we haven't had a spill or a broken glass or broken teacup yet from any of that stuff. So it's just, she is now saying it's harder for her to stay standing. When I'm bathing her in the shower, she starts complaining earlier about, "Ooh, it's hard for me to stay standing up." We still go for walks, but she doesn't like to walk as far as we used to. She gets tired a lot more easily. I still insist on going up the stairs, but there we go.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey, I guess it's possible if the physician would consider a order for a PT, and if you had a PT or an OT who's really good with vestibular treatment, that it might be worth an explore. But I don't think getting a scan is going to be helpful. I think possibly if you want to see whether or not her synapses are firing the best they can, then maybe the possibility of considering some treatment to see what happens would be the one thing to consider. But I don't know that I would have her go through that, because you would do as well as you're doing, whether or not it is a stroke. There's not something we could shift or change that would change that into something different. So yeah, no, it's a really good question. But in this case, given where she is and what you do already, and I'll let the others chime in as well, but I don't believe that it's going to add something to the equation that has value.
I wasn't sure that it would either, but that's the part of it is just a little bit curious is to have a reason to see how much her brain has shrunk in the last 2 or 3 years, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think it's a curiosity thing more than it would be a helpful in care thing. So I think depending on how curious you are and how much it would help you be aware of, wow, this is where we are now, to let go of the idea of, well, I wonder where we are. That may be a helpful phenomena as you look at how many more new areas are damaged, potentially, and how much shrinkage there is. But it may not be as obvious as, depending on who does the scan and how the scan is done, because it can be done, okay, it would see tumors, it would see major things, but it could miss still a good bit of stuff.
Yeah, well, the only thing I would want to do is a CAT scan, because these other things are way too noisy and difficult. And
too intrusive.
So,
see,
anyway, fair enough.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's a big good question. Thanks for asking, and thanks for checking in.
Yeah, Teepa and Rachel, I didn't know if this was relevant here. I don't know if Rachel, you'd gotten through the questions that were being sent to you, poor thing. If the stroke one, the other question that Deb had that added on to this was relevant, or should we put that as a separate one?
No, I think it goes. So the question was, if you know that what's happening is a stroke, then are we neglecting the person by just letting it happen at home and not doing anything about it?
This gets into, we're going to be doing tomorrow. I have on the Teepa for 10 in the morning, we have a palliative care physician who did a session with me, and it's really a great session. And so if you get a chance to listen to it, where what we talked about is, if we have had this conversation ahead of time about if and when I'm in this place in my dementia, and so what would we do even if we found out as a stroke? Do we really want something done intervention wise, or do I want to let it run its course? What's my value? What do I care about? Do I want to increase the possibility they could give me a clot preventing med and maybe keep my brain as well as it could be? And that would be something that early on in my dementia I might choose, because it could be really helpful to me. But as my dementia progresses, what my choice might be different than whoever else might be making a choice. So I think it is something that we want to, if we have a chance to have that conversation ahead of time, it's so much easier to know, okay, so I'm thinking at this point, it doesn't make sense. Whereas I think at this point, it would make a lot of sense to act quickly and responsively. But after we've done it a couple times and we're talking about multi-strokes, that's when our brain goes, I don't think this is a helpful thing to put her through that again, or him through this again, given what he indicated he valued most about all this and what he wanted done. So I'm going to continue to be supportive of where he came from in this, knowing that it may not kill him this time, but it may disable him more. But I have to, my challenge is to try to figure out ahead of time, what is it that he cares more about, so that, I want to be in the hospital as least possible. All right, well, then so that's my take on it. So I'm going to let other folks, Beth, anyone else in the room, and I'm going to leave that up to you, Rachel, and Matthew to sort of, and Beth to sort of monitor Cheryl, because I'm now on my phone because my computer decided it didn't like the Del Taco parking or Taco Bell parking lot, apparently, nearly as well.
You know, it's fun. It's interesting that these two questions sort of highlight very different places in dementia. It's not just our place in dementia in terms of the progression of the disease, but it's also our relationship with dementia. And it sometimes feels so separate from the person. And I think that's a great place sometimes to put it, to recognize what we know, and that check-in that you guys are doing in very different questions about something like an acute and sometimes even fixable a moment in medical. This is a real thing. And yet with vascular dementia or even other types of dementia, this becomes a different question. I love how Teepa talked about that idea of really knowing and having that conversation early would be ideal. And then the second place of early is if it's first happening and it provides us with such a amygdala inducing moment, that moment where I feel like I am just going to neglect my mother if I don't do something, is not a place one can live. Because we have those incidents and then we go to a place the next time it could be happening and we're living in this state of anxiety. And there does come that place, and the place that I think Jeffrey was talking, in a very different place where he's looking at dementia is in the room with him. He's been living with it quite some time, and he knows where his wife can be comfortable. He knows what might be possible, and he's got a big experience with this. We did the exact same progression with my father-in-law. With vascular dementia, when he had a stroke, it was so clear it was a stroke. My sister-in-law and my husband decided they really did, for their own well-being, need to take him to the hospital one time. And then they saw what it did to him, and they got the answers they needed, and they knew what they were looking for. And they got to ask those questions like, how painful is it? What can we do to make him feel comfortable? Is there anything that could be done? And that idea that we have to take care of our own brains and our own bodies and our own anxieties just as much in this marathon, it's not a sprint, may actually be just as important when we're talking about things like strokes, because they're real scary. And until we get into that place of comfort of saying, okay, so, I think we've had some strokes, and you ask a question like Jeffrey did, only then is it not even a question. So if you're asking that, Deborah, I think that's a great place to say, this is the first and second, I haven't had medical assistance on this. Whew, that perspective is everything. So I really admire that. Thank you for asking that.
I had wondered about the idea, Teepa, you mentioned the idea of palliative care. And I was wondering, with dementia, what would happen if we changed our way of thinking to more of a palliative way of thinking? And so depending where you are in the dementia, it would change what you do, and what you do wouldn't even necessarily change. It would be how you were thinking about it. And so really asking the question of, so how does this benefit my person? And what is the point? What are we going to do as a result? So like what Jeffrey was asking, or Deborah, you're asking, what is the benefit of putting her through a CT scan? What is it going to benefit her taking her to the hospital? I know she's having strokes. This is what she's going to be going through. How do I help her through the stroke and through the aftermath and recovery? But instead of just thinking like when the person is even towards the end of life, really looking at how do we provide comfort, and then even taking that further to what about challenges with showering or getting clean or eating or getting dressed? Okay, so let's step back. Why do they need to do this? And how can we provide comfort, or what's the point of doing this? Is this just because this is what we do? So I'm wondering what would happen if we changed our thinking. Just something I've been thinking about.
Well, and I think, that's where, we're always doing this balancing act of care versus neglect versus abuse. And in dementia, more than any other condition in my mind, and mostly at least of everything I can think, it really is this sort of trying to figure this out, like what's a reasonable thing to do and what's not a reasonable thing to do.
And what don't you like, but you can tolerate, and what can you absolutely not stand? Because each day we do things we don't like, but we do them because they're good for us. So if we talk about what does comfort mean? I mean, we can be uncomfortable for short windows of time, but being in pain for any length of time is what we really we can't tolerate. So being uncomfortable for a short window is like, okay, well, let's work through it. Let's get through it. I hate it too. I can help somebody get a blood pressure. I can help take a catheter out, put a catheter in. I can do a lot of things to support somebody, which other people might find, oh man, I don't think I could do that. And it's like, well, I mean, that's where figuring it out is what it's all about. So when we talk about comfort care, we're not talking about wrapping people in cotton wool and just letting them veg out, but it is this balancing thing. So I think it's a challenge to us to start really asking these questions, not only of ourselves, but of the care that we deliver, and making sure that it's really still focused on the person. And that asking somebody to be uncomfortable for a window of time, yeah, I mean, we all get uncomfortable, but there's got to be an out. It's not like you get to be uncomfortable for the rest of your life or miserable. So it's really trying to help figure that out, I think, is where we're at.
And Teepa, when you talk about the word palliative, some people still believe, I believe that palliative means death.
Right.
Right. And where palliative is not meaning that they're dying.
Yeah. No, not a bit. It just means that we're going to look more at the comfort of the individual, and that the care we provide is related to that. So, I mean, it would still mean early on that we would treat urinary tract infection if you got one. Absolutely. But after we've treated it for the 5th time in a row, and it's coming right back, and you end up now, oh, you've had C. diff positive, and we've had to go through that, and we finally got that resolved, but now you have another UTI. And it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? And it's not like it's easy. These are called dilemmas because there's not a, this is right, this is wrong kind of thing. It's really working through it based on us, but also really significantly based on the human being that we're trying to support and what they've shared with us, or how they've lived, and a lot of it, unfortunately, at this point in time is still supposition, because people haven't had a chance to say, how do you want to live? And if this happens, what do you want us to do? And know that stuff. People don't talk about it at that detail. And that's what gets a little tricky. So.
I think,
right,
Teepa,
Rachel. Oh, go for it, Jeffrey. Yep.
No, I was just going to say that I think, there's talk about palliative care and things and keeping the person comfortable. It just reminds me, in Teepa's book, I was trying to find where it is, Changing Brain, is when she talks about the 6 types of medical care. Yep. I can't remember what they are, but I do know that in my wife's case, what I'm looking at is, I say I want maintenance and preventive, because I want to maintain her, keep what she's got, and try to prevent her from getting worse. And it was a really difficult decision and dilemma for me just over a month ago when she had COVID, to take her to the hospital, because it was not a pleasant experience for her. It was not comfortable for her. It was not something I really want to do, because I have sworn to myself that I'm going to try to care for her at home for the rest of her life, keeping her comfortable. And the way the woman put the catheter in her to just get a urine sample so that we could test and make she did not have a UTI, which she did not, it was just not pleasant. Any of that stuff. And they wanted to stick needles into her to get gases. And they said, you can't find the veins. You can't you can't do it twice. You do it once and use the same thing. And it took forever to fight and complain. And if you're not there fighting for them, these medical care, they just do a job. They got a job to do. The nurse going, my job is to do this. My job is to do that. And they don't really think about how they're hurting the patient at the time. So it's just very interesting. I haven't thought about palliative care yet, because in my mind, maybe you could expand on this, Teepa, that I'm waiting for my wife to be in the pearl stage before exploring palliative care. And maybe you're making me think that I should be thinking about it earlier.
And I do think that's true. I think that, well, just to real quickly, we've got preventative, we've got curative, we've got rehab, we've got maintenance, and then we've got what we then call palliative, and then we have hospice, which is sort of that end of life, the process of having someone dying, and how do we actively support someone through dying, that transition. But in there we have maintenance care as well. I'm sorry, that was the other one. We have maintenance and compensatory. We compensate for things. So those were the options. So I think what we're talking about tomorrow morning, and I think it may be a helpful session, is that really and truly from when we get the diagnosis, we should be looking at, okay, how are we going to help this person be comfortable with things that are probably going to be somewhat uncomfortable for someone else to take over and start to be involved in. So whether it's mouth care or body care, or whether it's driving or financials, those are all things that as a mature, independent adult, having someone else involved in that can feel truly like, well, I don't want somebody involved. It's uncomfortable. So figuring out how to make it the least uncomfortable it could be and still keep the person in a place and space and situation that they prefer is where we have to put all the puzzle pieces together. So that's, I think, the trickiest. So check it out tomorrow morning, see what you think. We're going to have her back for a courageous conversation or a response to questions people raise up. Because she seems to be someone who really does get it and is really supportive. And so it was really great to talk with her. So I want to have more there. So, yeah. All right. So Rachel, take us forward.
Well, I see that Destiny had her hand raised. I wondered if she had something she wanted to share or ask.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me? So my grandma, I don't know if you remember the woman with OI that we spoke about a few weeks ago. She seems to be getting worse physically and mentally. She's quite upset with me, I think, at the moment, because I talked to her pain management doctor and suggested that the issues with her cognition are worsening, and there's nothing that he could really do because I'm not on the forms that, the consent forms to speak with the doctor or anything like that. But he did tell me that he would, he was paying attention to what I was saying, and she seemed upset with me after her appointment. She hasn't really been speaking with me. She hasn't been moving really. She's been in a lot of pain. The weather's been stormy, and she actually went in for another x-ray to check up on how her shoulder and arm were healing, which they're still healed. And we can see that. We can all see that. That's like one of the areas of bone density that's okay. So we know that she's like physically her bones are intact, and there shouldn't be like a medical reason for the reduction in movement that she's currently having. But she doesn't believe any of us. In her mind, it just happened. I've brought up my concerns about her cognition and her memory, and she insists that she's fine. And I'm at the point where I don't know what else I can do, but I'm just watching her wasting away, and I want to help her. I don't want her to live like this.
Destiny, you've got a really tough situation here where it feels like if she can't figure out how to get pain relief, and she can't figure out how to get pain relief, but there's a possibility at least that part of the reason she's in so much pain is her own social isolation and her own immobility and her own fear and her own frustration with things, that it's making it really challenging for somebody who truly does want to support and help her to gain any ground and to be able to help her feel any better, because she doesn't think that any of that is the issue. She thinks this issue, unfortunately, is this fracture that has healed. Now, there's always a possibility of nerve damage when a fracture has healed, especially one that involves the upper arm, because the nerve runs right along the humerus, and it then goes up inside the armpit and then is woven into the brachial plexus up at the neck. So there is always a possibility of extreme nerve pain. Unfortunately, the kinds of treatments people would do would involve the person having to be accurate in exactly what and where and how things are happening. And her challenge with doing that makes it really hard for them.
I don't know if this helps, but she is on gabapentin, and her pain management doctor has checked her and has found no indication of nerve damage. She gets these checks. Since we've last spoken, I believe she's had 2.
Okay.
And she's
Yeah.
feeling still no sign of nerve damage, still on gabapentin.
Yeah. So it appears that the pain is more of a psychological and an emotional and a spiritual pain, but her brain is saying it's a physical pain. And this inability to figure out what to do to make it better is a high risk situation for her to not find any relief, because she doesn't feel like people are listening to her. And the challenge is, so it's pain, but everything you've done to try to mitigate a physical pain has been unsuccessful. So I'll also turn it over to the team to see if they have any other thoughts. You're really in a really unforgiving position because she can't forgive you for not fixing this. And you're doing your very best, but there's no way to fix it. It's not a fixable without her collaboration, and she can't come out of her own distress state to participate. So I'm going to turn it over to the team and see.
At this point, okay. I don't care if she can never forgive me for, talking to you or her pain management doctor. I just, seeing her in pain, hearing that she's in pain constantly, I would rather her be angry with me for the rest of my life than have her continue to be in this type of pain.
Teepa, I just have a suggestion. I have no idea. When I see my wife in stress or in apparent distress, I just ask her to breathe. I do your breathing. Yes, I say, breathe, deep breaths 5 times, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And I do it with her. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm just wondering, is that something that Destiny could try with her grandmother?
I mean, that's a great idea. Has she ever done some either work with breathing, or has she done any work with pain relief through yoga or through meditation in the past?
No, she's always been a get up early, go to work, come home type person. She never did yoga or meditation.
Okay.
As far as the breathing exercises go, I could pose it, or have a family member pose the idea.
So if we're going to do it, I'll go ahead and do it with Beth. Beth, you want to pop in and?
Yeah. Hey, Teepa.
So,
Teepa. Teepa. Hey. Teepa. Breathe with me. Breathe with me.
I can't.
I know you can't. I'm so sorry.
I can't. I can't.
This is so hard.
It's hard. It hurts.
I'm so sorry.
It hurts.
Breathe.
Okay, so Beth, try. You're working a really good, and you could have to continue that. This. Go. Oh, I hate this.
So more about the anger, the frustration, less about the feeling it.
Right, because she thinks it's physical. Try it as like a release, but give me a sound to make, because I'm not able to let go of the breath.
You can't breathe out.
Breathing. I can't breathe. So try it as I'm so angry.
Teepa.
Yeah.
I'm so angry.
Angry. Yeah.
You're angry. You're angry.
It hurts.
got there a lot
happening to me
faster, didn't
now.
we?
Yeah, so we did. And what happened is when you gave me something to throw out, the word or the frustration to throw out of my body, I started throwing my breath out by accident. And then I'm breathing in and breathing out. And then you could, and for someone who's in high distress, and it's that sense of pain, 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 that can be the way to start it rather than trying to get the breathing, because that's too much cognitive almost. And I couldn't even get you. And I was simulating it, but I'm pretty decent at picking up
No,
on
that
what
makes
might
sense.
go in.
Funny enough, Teepa, and this may be a clue for someone, this idea of going to a place of distress like I did. I would have, if I did it again, I would sit down. Because if I was doing it right, I got a little dizzy because I didn't need the oxygen out that Teepa did. Because she kept going when I wasn't reaching her. And my guess is you'll know that you're expressing it enough. If you get a little dizzy, you might want to sit down.
Yeah,
Good job, Ben.
The anger that did seem like it would be something that would resonate more with her. But she also goes through these spells where she just like will literally lay in her chair and moan in pain, and you can see her get like hot and sweaty.
Yep.
From I don't know if it's exhaustion or
no, I think it's a physiological pain reaction. I think she's really experiencing real pain. The problem is we can't link it to a physiological cause. It's her system overreacting and doing a funky thing where it's registering pain where, I mean, physiologically, the insight that she feels the pain is coming from, that isn't it. It's from a very painful place inside, but it's a space that isn't that shoulder. And so,
but it would still be appropriate to take the approach that you and
yes.
Beth just did.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's the pain of not being herself, of not being able to do the thing you just told me, get up and go to work. That's what I'm supposed to do. And I can't. Oh. And so it's really that, and she gives up at some point and she can't even get the breathing to happen. It's just exhaustion. And she can't figure out how to get it to work. Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's a really miserable place to be though, Destiny. I'm so sorry. Ugh. I'm sorry for your grandma too, that this is so miserable. I mean, it's a really awful place for her.
Well, she does have days where I guess she kind of remembers and she gets her timeline back that it did happen, like several years ago. And she is better on those days. So I'm hoping that if I can just help her, through these bad days, if we can maybe get some more good days in there, they'll start to outweigh the bad.
And that can actually take away the pain because she's not as trapped in this memory of time that she gets trapped in, where it did hurt that bad. It was a real, so she has a traumatic experience. So she has sort of post-traumatic stress disorder happening for her. Because it was real. That pain was real at the time.
Oh, yes, that I know chronic pain well. So, thank you.
Thanks, Destiny. All right, Rachel, back to you.
So, Teepa, somebody was wondering about if someone has dementia as well as macular degeneration. If the person is in good health otherwise, do you have some ideas for how maybe to engage her? Because she's not really doing a whole lot, and it would be really nice to figure out how to help given the macular degeneration with the dementia.
Yeah. So this is really a very tricky thing because our eyes often compensate for what we can't figure out cognitively. And having macular means the center field of vision is either fuzzy, blurred, or totally missing. So the way you can see things is if you imagine looking straight ahead and putting your hand right in front of yourself. And the only way you can see what you want to see is to keep your vision straight ahead and notice things out the edge. but you can't actually try to look at them or you'll lose them. So it's so frustrating for people with macular degeneration. You have to look at people sort of out of the corner of your eye, but you can't turn your eyes that way in order to see them. And so that makes conversations difficult sometimes because you can't read social expression, and staying in a conversation with dementia is challenging. So doing things with hands and doing things with hands and mouth kinds of things are things that are going to have some value and meaning, unless there's a hearing impairment. And that's called the perfect triad that nobody should have, but that people do. So music is often something that has value. Creating things that people can do, folding and doing things that don't require a lot of sight, but do require fine dexterity for early to middle, even into the mid part of the condition, like wrapping yarn, doing things that have a tactile nature to it. So for instance, using a plastic needle with yarn and plastic mesh can also be, when you create the rhythm, they can do some quote unquote sewing or some embroidery. So things that don't require as much sight as they require. So I've done rug hooking with people who have macular degeneration and dementia. Now it requires I do it alongside them so I can notice errors and notice when they're trying to do something and it's not in the right place, and I can guide their hand into the place. But it's a way that they can engage with a number of things that otherwise they can't. So I will also open this up to some other folks in the group, because if they're physically well, the challenge is trying to move around a lot when your center field of vision is missing. You only want to be in familiar places with familiar people doing familiar things. Otherwise, it gets really scary really fast. And so being somewhere, I really want to have control over some elements, or I get real worried pretty quick about things, and it makes it hard to focus and then listen and do things. But I'm going to open it up to some other folks here.
How about just doing some reminiscing time together on things that the person bringing out something that you know that they enjoy and doing that reminiscing about
So
it.
what would you bring with you, Cheryl? What kind of things might you bring along so the reminiscing has a tactile component to it and a hand component or something that would allow people to explore it and remember it with their hands, if at all possible? And this is where, rather than photos, looking at some other things. So what are some objects you could think that you might bring along as some possibilities?
Well, if we're reminiscing about the farm, could bring some farm animals along. If we're reminiscing about kitchen, we could bring some kitchen products along, recipes that we could read out loud. And so.
What about, Cheryl, if you had a bowl and a spoon and we have measuring things that, you know, they have a top and you can run the thing across the top to know whether you filled it up. So you get to use your hands while you're doing things, and then you stir things together into the pot. And so I have lots of people that have macular degeneration that can use a butter knife to cut things. So a sharp knife might be a little more dicey. Ha ha ha. Sorry, didn't mean to make the pun or play, but they can use a butter knife. So for instance, making banana pudding. You get the vanilla wafers. We open the container of the vanilla wafers. We put the vanilla wafers in the bottom. We get the milk. We get like 2 cups of milk that come in a carton. We open the carton. The carton goes in with, we open the pudding. We mix up the pudding. We put it over the, and so it's done mostly by touch and with some guidance. And then we put the bananas. So we cut up the bananas. We peel the bananas. We cut up the bananas. We put them in. And then we can make the whipped cream. Or we could buy the ready whip, depending, you know, whatever you want to do. But then what we have is a party afterward, and we celebrate what a good cook she is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Have the party.
So, yeah. So I think looking for things that we can do together. So when when Cheryl says reminisce, what I'm thinking is, okay, how can I take a favorite activity and make it more tactile and less visual? And how can I make it relatively safe, but still engaging her rather than just us doing it or just talking, because it leaves her body unconnected to what we're doing and she can't see well. So, I mean, that would be my thought on it.
But it reminds me, I love this idea of doing things that have a very clear feel to them. Like when you cut a banana, you think about the give that it has until suddenly you're through it. And like every time I'm going to work with somebody with some sort of visual change, that I tend to try to start to do things and I close my eyes a little bit and see what I can feel, what would feel familiar. And it reminds me of this gentleman that I worked with who had macular degeneration, but he also had an intellectual disability. And he would stand, I would stand very, very close to him. And I would actually be with his right arm. And now I know so much more about this, why it may have worked, because he could actually follow my motions. And we were actually doing very parallel actions. So he had all of his stuff and I had all of mine. And together we made oatmeal. Or together I would pantomime putting on pants and he would actually ride along with my arm with me. It may be a situation where this gentleman had visual changes longer than I would expect. But it was amazing to me how much when I did what I called in my head at that time, parallel play. I was parallel getting dressed with him. I was parallel getting oatmeal going and he enjoyed it, but it was really firm side by side. Interesting how that may be something, if you try that and it's not working, see if maybe that parallel where he can ride or she can ride along with you and do things with you. Maybe it's 2 sets of banana pudding ingredients.
Yeah, or maybe if there's somebody that enjoyed exercise, there's always that chair exercise together, right? With the music.
Side by side.
Side by side.
Yeah, so what we're proposing is, and we tend to use the technique hand under hand, where we'll place our hand under someone's to guide them through the motion once or twice, since it's a familiar phenomena that your hand does things, and then turn the object over to them and let them, and their brain goes, oh, yeah, now I get it. And so it makes it a little easier to jumpstart a system without vision.
So Teepa, kind of going before we kind of switch over to more deeper exploration. Kelsey had a question, and Kelsey, feel free to add in, but I think the gist was that someone that she's working with pretty much requires consistent redirection with every task. So he'll ask repeatedly, what do I do now? What do I do now? And then he gets distracted. They've tried giving him visual, verbal, and touch cues. He's constantly on the move and he doesn't stay focused very long. And so they've tried different things, but they're wondering, how can they help him focus on something more than 15 or 20 seconds before they have to give him the repeated cue? Is that kind of close, Kelsey?
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a really good question. And it's a very common thing somewhere in the emerald to amber state, where somebody is losing sequencing at an alarming rate. They really can't go from this step in the sequence to the next step in the sequence. They get to that, okay, I think I'm done. And then it's like, I don't know what happens next. And so I'm actually going to, I think, I'll make a video with somebody to show how to do it, because it's basically here you go. And so I go to the next step with a demonstration of the step almost. So here you go. And I offer the object or the thing that comes next just in the moment when I see them completing. I have to prep it up so that I'm there just at the right second. And I go, and here, good. Yeah, that's it. And then here, yeah, fingers here, you got it. And I have to make it feel like it's continuing versus a new task. And so the timing is super critical. If I do it too early, it interrupts. If I wait too long, then they lose the task. And so it has to be this really back and forth, really quick pickup on my part. So before he truly puts the ball down, I've got to catch it and move it forward. So it feels like a rhythm without a pause. Because if there's any pause, we're starting from a new activity.
Yeah, so I should do more research, but basically at those stages, then there's no real way, like I can't get him to sit in a chair for more than 15 seconds without that constant.
No, because what am I doing here? I'm gonna say by history, this is either a guy who was pretty active, pretty busy.
Yeah.
He was a mobile guy. I mean, sometimes we have people who are runners or marathoners, or they worked a hard lot. I mean, they were always up and going. They were delivery people, you know. If that's my pattern, then why the heck am I sitting down? That doesn't make any sense. I better go find out what I'm supposed to be doing. And being still and seated means I'm not doing what I should be doing. I'm missing something. I'm not doing something I should be. And there's distress. And so then the distress starts, and then I can't sit down. I don't want to. No, I can't stop. I can't sit here because I have to be doing something. And so this is where sometimes you can get people to be still, but they get so distracted by what they see, by what they hear, by what's out there that they should be involved in. But they don't know how to stay involved in it. They just try to figure out something to get involved in. But then as soon as they get involved, then they don't know what to do. And then it's, well, what do I do now? Which will wear people out.
Yeah, and we're pretty low staff, so it's been really tough to keep an eye on him, keep him safe. And
yeah, and so there's a lot of walking, but it's almost like pacing, and then it's like approaching and wanting to figure out what to do, but then he can't do it alone, even for a minute. It can't even last a minute, unless he's sleeping. If he's sleeping, then he can sleep. But other than that, as soon as he's awake, he needs guidance because he feels like he needs support to know what to do. And without that, the distress kicks in.
Yeah. So there's really nothing that I could do at this. It's a sniff, you know, so I just don't know.
It's a really tricky thing because the problem is he needs to move his body. And dancing, you could do it for a little bit, but you've got other stuff you've got to do. And dancing is something that you transition from this to this to this. Marching is this. You can do some things, but they're all tend to be more big body than fine detail. And he doesn't get fine detail on his own at all, I'm thinking.
Yeah, no. All right.
Yeah, I mean, a volunteer, you know, looking around, and is there anyone who would be interested in learning more about working with someone with dementia, and interested in walking with this guy and being with the guy and showing him things and queuing him up, because he's at risk for causing some harm to himself because he can't stop without some support. Rocking can be a thing, but he won't stay down in the rocking chair. It's not enough. That's not a strong enough stimulus for him, I'm suspecting.
Yeah, no, we've tried that too. I've tried all different sensory inputs. I've tried.
One thing, if you haven't tried it yet, is a weighted vest.
Okay. Yeah.
Really putting some decent amount of weight on him, to see if that, and maybe some neoprene, like a tight,
the compression.
Some compression, to see if you do those two things, if it helps organize him a little bit more, because he's disorganized. The other thing Beth's suggesting is maybe a cart really loaded with sandbags, so it's really super heavy, and so he can push it, and that can be organizing for a brain and body that's
Yeah. And if he is earlier in the disease process, it may be making it look practical. It could be literally doing things that require a lot of pushing and pulling, such as like pushing a sandbag when you're outside. It could be, you know, taking a broom, and depending on his level of physical and also cognitive change, it could be something that looks productive, like yard work or something, if you've got access to an outside space. But it would take some trial and error.
Yeah. I'm up for it. We're desperate. I think you're muted, Teepa.
And Jeffrey's suggestion, depending on his skill set, is a stationary bicycle for the upper body. I would do it maybe rather than the lower body, going around and around, and maybe with some weights on it.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't add weights. We tried it, but I didn't add weights, so
yeah, and
the
it's
weights
too
will
light.
help.
It's too light. It's too light, I suspect. It's not heavy enough work.
It is. So we have one of those bikes that are, you know, it's a both. So
okay.
you can add the resistance. So I did add it up, and he would go once and he'd go, what do I do now? And I go, okay, spin. And then I'd spin with him. And then I go,
Put
and again.
some music. Try putting some music on with it. So, and do it with the rhythm of the music.
Okay.
And see if you can get him going with the music.
Okay. Awesome.
And try music combining with it and see if the rhythm of the music keeps him going.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't even think of that. Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, it might buy you some time. I mean, it's not going to be a long-term thing, but I mean, it might buy you some time.
Yeah. I'll take anything.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Yep. I hear you. I don't think he'd stick with vacuuming. I think it's too purposeful, and I think it would require too much thinking on his part. I think he'd do one stroke and be done.
Yeah, we've done lots of folding and even just putting his clothes up and all that. It's
got to be a more rote movement that he doesn't have to think so much about, I think.
Yeah, and for the same guy, we're also having exit, lots of escaping. And we've been told we can't put up a stop sign. We can't put up any of those weight signs. So it's just kind of been catch him before he goes away. Is there anything? I mean, like someone said a black mat. We have a black mat in the front of but I feel like that's more scary, and he doesn't really care anyway because he doesn't look down. He's only looking here, right?
Frequently I have found either they ignore them or they try to step over them, which is like, let's talk about a risky behavior. So trying to hang on and get my leg across it is like, that's a bad idea. So I would not go that way. What I would say is I might have a thing that says, if you have, I don't know if you have an audio, it would be, hey, Jeffrey, I could use your help. And to get him, oh, hey, Jeffrey. And I'm using Jeffrey because he's here. Oh, hey, Jeffrey. And get the attention, say, I need your help. And signaling to come back to you rather than the chasing behavior, because the chasing or going after behavior tends to trigger more of an needing to get out behavior because it becomes a chase.
Yeah.
And so that, ooh, I could really use your help for a second. Here, come here. I need you. Because one of the reasons he's trying to get out is just like he's trying to find the next step. He's trying to find where he's supposed to be. He's trying to find who he's supposed to be with. And it's not making any sense. And so the getting to someplace is what he's really, I'm trying to find the place where I'm supposed to be, because he can't figure out where it is.
Yeah.
And it's wondering. So it's more of a wondering than he is trying to actually escape to us. He's just trying to go somewhere and he doesn't know where it should be, but it's clearly not where he is.
Yeah, definitely.
So Teepa, I'm curious, in situations like that, could it be helpful at certain periods of the day when available to change the environment, to have him go with somebody somewhere else other than where he's been, and do something with them outside of that space and then come back to that space? Is that potentially something that could help a little bit more with that desire to want to wander out if he gets that change of environment throughout the day?
It's a possibility that we could explore. There's also a possibility that he won't hold on to it. The reason I didn't bring it up is because his recall of what's happening is so short. I mean, he has no working memory. And I rarely say that, but he really doesn't have a working memory. He can't link a task together from step to step to step to do even simple things. It's really hard. He relies on others to sequence him through everything because he doesn't know what the there's no working memory left. And that speaks to a certain kind of loss, which is unique. I mean, that's not a very common loss. Most people have short windows, but that's like, I once I do a step, I don't have any idea what I've done and what comes next.
Cool. So
Yeah, we've
maybe that might be more of a break then for the people back in the area if he goes
Right.
something else in that moment. So they're now thinking of the concept of, if this is the loop that we're in, and this is a consistency, now thinking about our team, where can we give our team members a break? Where can we help them recover from this consistent loop? So maybe that is an option for helping to give them a break as he goes out and with somebody else and tries some things and does some things and then comes back and they get a little more of that rest and recovery from that consistent loop with that person, potentially, maybe.
Yeah, we've tried to take him outside. I've taken him outside for a few times and he just doesn't even realize that he's outside. I mean, we walk up and down just to, like, there's a ramp and I walk him up and down. I thought heavy work, but he just keeps asking, what do I do? What do I do? And
yeah, so the exit isn't really, I mean, this is the tricky part. Exit seeking isn't really exit seeking. It's just going somewhere, but then when he gets somewhere, he's just like, what do I do now? I mean, it's the same phenomena. So Matthews, you guys just need a break, but nobody else wants to help. I'm just feeling that, unfortunately.
It does actually, the minute you said that last bit about where his visual field is and that very short-term memory, as well as the physical actions and the stuff that you've tried, and that sort of like that, you don't stay up in a place of we've tried everything. You're not giving up. You're no, we've tried that. You're doing it from a very sapphire, a very aware sort of place. And the only time I've ever encountered that, and this is really, guys, tell me if I'm wrong here, but this sounds more like a movement disorder or maybe even Huntington's sort of level of distress that I've seen when someone's unable to, and that short-term memory is almost crazy short. I'm wondering if there are movement disorder parallels here, if that gives any of our OT therapy folks some ideas, or if I'm really off.
No, there could be some Huntington's. I mean, it could be Huntington's. Do you know what kind of dementia he does have?
no, and unfortunately we're very rural. We, like, our doctor's barely in. We're just
Gotcha.
Yep.
don't have a great history. It's
How old is the guy?
I want to say mid 80s.
Okay, so probably not Huntington's. He's too old.
Huntington, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another movement, and I can't, Beth. I can't think of another movement that would be that late in life, making itself known.
Keep us abreast of this, because there are these sorts of challenges that that there is someone who's listening to this or listening to this recording that says, oh my gosh, that's my guy. So I would love, as your team is exploring, and if you guys could really track, okay, we tried this and this didn't work, but we did it this way. Anything that gives you, so that exploration, that back and forth with your team, if in the meantime, your team can get some purpose and meaning behind the things they're trying, knowing that there's somebody else that says, yeah, this is a big deal. This stuff is hard sometimes, especially when we have more complex situations. I would love if you maybe could tell us how that's going. And then we might as well be able to do this, this big brain hive and get up with more ideas, especially hearing more details of it. If that's something your team might be able to get excited about.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, I'm excited, obviously, but sometimes that's just the OT, right? That sometimes it's harder to get other people. They're just bothered and frustrated, and I see that.
Take care of it. Yep.
Yeah.
You might be able to hook a couple that could get excited. And excited is not the right word. I think it's okay, so somebody's listening. Okay, I do have it bad. Okay, listen. That sort of engagement level.
Yeah, and talk through more.
Yeah. And you might be able to get some clues about things that you think are happening and are not happening as often as you'd hope.
Yeah.
But I doubt it, considering that you're also involved too.
You made me think of one other thing. I have you just one person is I got a paintbrush with water and we painted bricks. And it was back and forth, up and down, but water on a paintbrush on bricks. It changed the color. And so it gave him something visual to go on. And so going back and forth or up and down, and he went the whole, so I had somebody who was able to do that. That was one other idea that came to mind.
I'll try it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, it's a tough one, Kelsey. So thanks for being curious. Okay, Rachel, what we got?
We're running out of time and we have a lot of questions. So this one is from our friends that sent in this question kind of a while ago. And they're in Indonesia, and there are two brothers who have a mom who's 83 years old, and they are not necessarily with her, but they have a carer. She has moderate Alzheimer's and vascular, was diagnosed around 2014. And the mom is very aggressive towards the caregiver without really a reasonable reason, such as she will hit her, she will pull her clothes. She's really not nice. So they're kind of trying to figure out what do they do. One of the brothers is there, and the aggressive episodes escalate when he is not home. She seems to think that this person is a stranger. So they're trying to figure out kind of what to do. She does have some sleep disturbance during the night. But I don't know, this kind of a basic idea of some of the challenges that they're facing, and they're trying to figure out what they can do to help the caregiver in particular, because she's in a pretty rotten position.
So mom doesn't like the person who's doing the care. And I'm wondering, it by this point in the condition, classically, the person needs some assistance with personal care stuff, which means you're entering their intimate space, which means you're touching them and you're around them and you're doing things that classically, historically, family might have done in this particular culture. If the sons had wives and those wives are responsible for taking care of mom. I mean, that is a very common phenomena. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but it is a very common phenomena. So what it means is that mom is not thrilled with this whole having this person who has no business being around her or near her, trying to do things with her. And that's just unacceptable. She just finds that whole thing pretty unacceptable. And so she can't seem to get rid of her. And when her son's around, she doesn't want to appear to be really mean, but it's when her son's missing, it's like, get her out of here. She wants her out of here. And so she's trying to give her reasons to leave.
So, hi, Teepa. So our mom, she's still physically able to do stuff on her own. So, but I think her anxiety, I think, starts from, well, she used to own a business, and obviously she, used to handle her own finances, and now she's not. So my brother does give her, the money regularly. However, she always feels that she's never have any money. And this is where I think could be that she thinks that with the caregiver, her allowances is
being spent on her.
Yeah, it's not on her. And also the relationship with the caregiver, it's to her is probably between a boss and an employee, as she was a boss before. So it's not really a companionship. She doesn't see her as a companion. And we can't ask the caregiver to, do activities together, because she said, you're not my friend. You're supposed to do things for me. I can't, what are you doing here?
You're wasting money, you're wasting time, get out. Leave me be, get out of here. And because she really can't leave, then that creates greater tension. Because if she were able to just walk away and leave, then your mom would be less distressed because she can't get rid of her.
Yeah. And that's when she starts hitting her, she starts pinching her. And
she's asked, and because the woman won't leave, then she has to get more physical with her. And your mom would never have done that historically. She ran a business, you can't do that to employees. But the employee, you could fire them and they'd leave.
Well, this is where my brother also thinks that it's in her character, because she's pretty short-tempered previously, and sometimes she does sort of hit someone on the hand like that, like a teacher,
Just I want your attention, pay attention to me. You listen to me, I'm telling you something. Don't ignore me, listen to me.
But obviously, because she's pretty strong, and everyone's threshold with that hit is different. So to her, oh, that doesn't hurt. I didn't really hit you. And to other people, oh my God, you hit me.
You hit me. And so it appears that the relationship between the two of them is pretty solidly set now, which is your mom doesn't want her there. Your brother's the one that wants her there. And, it's not that she needs the support, but in her mind, she needs this woman out of here. This woman doesn't need to be there. This is ridiculous. And if it's affecting how much money I'm getting, I really want her out of here. Because she does understand enough economics to know that if you're paying somebody, then I'm getting less.
Yeah. And also, we live in a gated community, and when she has the money, she likes to give tips to. That's my brother. So she gives away money as tips and stuff like that.
She wants to have prestige. She wants prestige. It's all about, she's been a woman of power, and she still wants to be a woman of power. And when people don't, quote unquote, listen to her, she doesn't like it one little bit. Now, historically, she wouldn't have done what she's doing now, but she wouldn't have tolerated this woman. She would have fired her.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have been able to make her, that would have been it. We would have been done with it. The fact that she's still here is like, well, this is not right. Now, I'm curious, is this the first care your mom has had then?
No.
No. What's happened to the other ones?
She kicked them out once or twice.
Yeah. Okay. So if she works at it hard enough, she thinks she'll win this time too.
Yeah. Well, the first one came back because it was the first one was our when we were young. That person was our domestic helper. We were the same age, so she came back. And then when I was my family was out of not in the same city actually. A couple of years ago. So I went out. I went back to my family, and then 2 days after, she kicked the helper.
The carer out. Yeah.
And this is almost happening again. But luckily I'm in town, so I can intervene in that.
You can intervene.
Yeah.
So I have a curiosity. Do you have any carers that are more the age and vintage of your mom? Or is this woman the age and vintage of your mom?
No,
No.
I think she's 30 something or 40.
Yeah. And I'm wondering about an older woman who would be more companion-like. This is someone that that really she lost her husband. She doesn't have anyone. She really could use a place to be right now. And I'm wondering if she could be here for right now, because she really could use a place to be. And she's somebody who knows how to play some of the games that your mom might. Does your mom have any games that she enjoys playing, like mahjong or anything like that?
She does hand embroidery, but
okay,
that's what she loves.
That's her thing.
Yeah,
okay.
But I think she does need more activities, and this is the problem, that we don't have anyone that can do that with her.
Yeah.
Our caregiver lives with right. My mother.
So she is more likely to be willing to have somebody come in and come out to play things with, do things with her, than she is to have the person who's staying in the house do things with her. Because she doesn't like the person, she doesn't want anybody in the house other than family. She doesn't want anybody else there because her independence, and she wants to have that sense of being independent, but she can't really be independent because she's not quite safe 100% of the time, especially with this spreading the money around business, among other things. So, okay, team, what else we got with thoughts for this?
I just see in the chat, Teepa, that their caregiver lives with them. So notice that in chat.
So my question is, because my situation is sort of a little different, is I was trying to get my wife to accept the caregiver, and we've had a live-in housekeeper for 6.5, 7 years. Do you have a separate housekeeper as well? Or because Teepa asked me to convert the housekeeper into the caregiver. We tried that. Language is the problem. It doesn't work in our case. But I'm wondering is if you go along with the lines of is get someone else to be the housekeeper to do most of the essential things in the house, doing the laundry, cooking, and feeding. And because I told the housekeeper, your job is my wife's nutrition. It's your job to make sure that you prepare meals that she's willing to eat and that she eats them. And so our housekeeper, makes special soups out of leftovers to make sure my wife eats things and things that. I'm just wondering, would it work for you to have a housekeeper instead of a live-in caregiver, and then have someone else, such as like Teepa is saying, come in and be more of a companion than a caregiver? Or is that not an opportunity?
She's doing mostly housekeeping work, actually. The caregiver is doing more.
Does your mom see her as a housekeeper though, or does she see her as a caregiver? How would your mom rate
housekeeper?
Housekeeper.
Okay, and she doesn't want a housekeeper.
Well, if we told her she's a caregiver, she would definitely kick her out the second she stepped in.
Okay, so she believes she's a housekeeper even.
That's right. It's a better option for us to introduce who she is.
So when she's hitting her, tell me a little bit about what the person is doing when your mom hits her and pinches her.
Well, sometimes when they do things, or when she's trying to do things with her, for example, mopping the floor, and my mom sees her as handling the mop wrong, she would pinch her. She would do something physically.
Okay, so this is where the person is not doing it your mom's way. So if she could be more comfortable saying, so Mrs. G, I'm supposed to mop. Do I push it like this, or do I do it like this? Ask for your mom's advice. So your mom is the boss of her.
I think whatever she does, whatever the housekeeper does, is always wrong in my mom's eye.
And that's why I'm saying, Mrs. G, I know you have a certain way you like to do the mop. Could you show me that movement? Show me how to do that, because I don't do it right. I know I don't do it right, and it makes you wrong. It makes you mad, and I am so sorry. Could you show me how I should do it? Do I do it like this, or is there another way? And so let your mom be the boss of her. A little more bossing with how
Then-
you do things.
Of course, and let her be the boss. My case was very different because my wife just didn't do anything. She let the housekeeper do everything. But if you have a wife, if you have a mother who wants to be in charge, then let her be in charge. As long as the housekeeping gets done, and more or less, that's
And you have
keeping your
to do
mother
it with
busy.
permission. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
well, you
it's having
always
to
have to
do-
ask for permission. Never let her do anything to your mother or without asking permission. Always ask permission.
So
Well, the
Mrs.
thing
G,
is, when she did ask for permission, she said, well, what would you like me to cook today? And she'll tell her whatever. And
No. That's what Teepa would say. Don't give her so much choice. One or two things. I need to cook you lunch today. Would you like chicken or would you like soup or something like that? Don't just the two choices or the one choice or something else. Teepa's good at all this stuff.
But
But let her be the boss and let her choose.
But then when she's cooking, she'll say, you didn't ask me.
okay, so
She
what this is
forgot
where the
that she
memory
had
thing,
given-
okay, so now the memory thing kicks in. And so
Yeah.
I could use, would you come look and see, I'm gonna chop up the vegetables. I could use tell me if I'm doing this okay or not. So she has to be involved the whole way through. If she has downtime while the worker is working, then what are you doing? I never said to do that because she lost the activity in her mind while this worker was doing it because she can't hold on to it. And so she thinks she's doing something she should. I never told you to do that. And the worker without thinking is going to say, well, yeah, you did. You're the one that picked what I was making.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. You did too. I did not. And so this turns into an argument in her mind.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the worker is cringing and going, no, ma'am, no, I am only cooking what you made, what you said to make. And no, I didn't. And it turns into an argument because your mom can't remember having said or done anything about it. And so she's frustrated as all get out with this woman who says she's done things she hasn't done. And that makes her furious to the point where then she smacks her. Now you're lying to me on top of everything else.
Yeah. And then, what was I going to say? When I forgot my line of thoughts now.
How can we make my mom, accept the caregiver or the housekeeper? Like,
she has to be in the boss of her. From the description of your mom, if mom doesn't feel like she's the boss, she's going to continue to want to abuse her or get rid of her. She gets a sense of a pushback, and the carer doesn't mean to push back, but as soon as she tells her something is the way it is, and it's not that she's wrong, it's just your mom doesn't understand how that could be that way. She gets really angry with her, and then everything blows up. So the carer has to really, if possible, get more skillful at saying, so I should push the mop this way, yes? Or is it more this way? Well, you're so stupid.
Yeah.
I know.
I know what my mom's going to say. She's going to say, well,
if you don't,
you're the house helper. This is not your first time.
It isn't. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I absolutely should. But you are so good at exactly the way you want it. And you have certain things. You have a higher standard than most of the places I've worked. I have never seen a woman who has had such a high standard of care in her home. You are you must have run a business that was remarkable. You have such an eye for detail.
Yeah.
And I think that the son, if you're the boss in her mind, if she will take orders from you, you have to tell her you're doing this to keep her safe. All you're caring about is her safety, and that you can tell her she's still the boss, but as long as this person is here to help keep you safe at my direction, I want her here to make sure you're safe because I need to know that you're safe, and I don't feel comfortable unless I know you're safe.
And this is the difference between a husband and a son. Frequently.
I guess so.
One thing that I was thinking is, what about if she is more tuned into when my sons are here, I don't want to misbehave in front of them. what about if, and she pays attention to men as somewhat of an authority? You guys, the sons are somewhat of an authority. What if you said, Tony, said something like, I really need to help this woman get trained as a cleaner. And I was wondering if you could train her because you're so good at this. And you know, but I need you to be nice to her because she's a friend of mine, but we really need to work together to make this woman turn into a good housekeeper. I don't know if that would be just asking for the woman to get beaten up or not.
Well, we'll try. We'll try that.
But if you're in charge of, if your mother really respects you, I just wonder if that might be a way to say, I need the housekeeper in here. But it's not to keep you safe, Mom. I need the housekeeper in here. Can you help train her? Because I'm, you know, she's a friend, or I'm using her in another job, or I don't know, something where it's your, she's doing it for you as I'm your mother. I'll take care of your friend for you. And then tell the woman, you know, the housekeeper, you don't need to say anything about looking after her. You're just there as a pair of eyes to help her stay safe when you can.
Yeah,
I don't envy her job. Her job would be very hard. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom is in my presence when I'm in her eyesight. She's a different person than I'm not than when I'm not. So we have a 2-story house. I spend most of my time on the second floor, on the upper floor. I can hear what happened, the commotion that happens downstairs. That's because I'm not in her eyesight. But whenever I see an escalated, you know, event, I rush downstairs and she immediately changes, just like that, when she sees me.
So she knows you're the authority. She knows you'll call her on it. I mean, she's not stupid, but the problem is she does want to be the boss. I mean, that's
whenever I appear on her eyesight, she changes. She acts as if, oh, I'm just joking. I'm just playing around. That's what.
But then, as soon as you leave, she'll go back to the other behavior because that's the challenge. Is what you're doing is it will only happen when you're there. Sort of like supervisors in general. They're only effective when they're there if we have a worker who really feels put upon and feels that they're not being treated fairly. And that's the problem with your mom, is she doesn't feel she's being treated honorably and fairly. And so unless we can get the care to do a shift of, I could use your help. I know you have a way of doing this that you are so much more specific than most places. I used to be okay at this. I don't know whether I'm doing okay or not. Could you show me how you want me to do it? When you're fixing the lunch, you know, could you show me? Now, I know you want the vegetables cut for your soup. Would you like them? Let me show you how I'm doing them and you let me know if it's okay. So she has to get approval, because your mom likes to be the prover, I think.
And Teepa, approval before she gets angry.
Before she gets angry. Right. So as she's trying to do
before mom gets starts doing the just go, hey, I could really use your help. I know you're really skilled at, right? But before she gets angry at her going, what
are you doing? That's not how I asked you.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's some things to try anyway.
Yeah.
We'll try everything.
I know you're sort of stuck. Yeah. All right. Well, Rachel, we are, I think, out of time.
We are.
Well, I know we have some questions, so I think we'll be covering some of them on Teepa for Tens.
Yeah, and for sure, for all you folks out there who've been watching, thank you so much for joining us. You can reach out to us at ata@teepasnow.com with your questions that we might not have been able to get to tonight, or the questions that we do have, like Teepa said, that we hadn't gotten to. We will find a place, whether it's a live at 5 or a Teepa for 10, to be able to answer those questions. We also want to show thanks to our sponsor for the month. This month's sponsor is Relias, and Relias delivers those better outcomes with their custom solutions. Their training platform uses assessment and performance metrics to deliver personalized learning plans based on specific knowledge gaps, saving you time and money. So Relias, big thank you very much for this month's sponsorship. And we put the link in the chat for folks to click on and check that out. So thank you guys again very much. Thank you so much, Teepa, for joining us in the KFC Taco Bell parking lot.
It's a lot quieter here than it was earlier.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's calmed down by now. And thank you so much, PAC team, for all your help, and everybody else who joined us and all of the help and questions that you asked tonight. We appreciate everything, and we look forward to seeing you next month, which will be our dementia problem solving with the PAC team on that first Wednesday of the month. Till then, take care with care, everybody. Have a good evening.